Malcolm checked his reflection in the hallway glass, smoothing a tie that cost more than my first car. He turned to me with a sad, pitying smile. "It is going to be okay, Adrian," he whispered, leaning in so his mistress would not hear. "I will not let you starve." He truly believed he was the benevolent king exiling a peasant. He did not know that in 20 minutes he would not even own the shoes on his feet. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The hallway of the Fulton County Superior Court smelled like floor wax and anxiety. It was a specific scent, sharp and chemical, designed to cover up the smell of sweaty palms and ruined lives. I sat on a hard wooden bench that dug into my spine, watching the rain streak against the tall windows. It was pouring outside, a relentless gray sheet that drowned the city of Atlanta. But inside, the air was dry and suffocating. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. I found that strange. I should have been shaking. According to the script my husband had written for me, I should be a weeping mess, begging for scraps. But I felt nothing but a cold, heavy stone in the center of my chest. Malcolm stood 10 feet away, near the water fountain. He was laughing. It was a soft, confident chuckle, the kind he used when he closed a big sale. He was talking to his lawyer, a man named Bradley who wore a suit that was too shiny and a smile that was too oily. Bradley nodded enthusiastically at whatever Malcolm was saying, probably calculating his commission on the divorce settlement they expected to force down my throat today. Then there was Chloe. She stood slightly behind Malcolm, scrolling through her phone with a bored expression. She looked younger than 24. Her makeup was flawless, a little too heavy for a Tuesday morning court appearance, but perfect for the victory lunch they had undoubtedly planned. She wore a white dress that looked expensive, likely purchased with the supplemental credit card I had found 3 months ago. She looked up, caught my eye, and offered a small, tight smirk. It wasn't aggressive. It was worse. It was dismissive. She looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that had been left out on the curb for trash pickup. Malcolm broke away from his lawyer and walked toward me. He moved with that easy, athletic grace that had charmed me 7 years ago. He stopped right in front of my knees, invading my space, forcing me to look up at him. "You look tired, Addie," he said softly. His voice was dripping with that fake, suffocating concern. He reached out as if to pat my shoulder, then thought better of it and let his hand drop. "I did not sleep well," I said. My voice was raspy. I cleared my throat. He sighed, shaking his head. "I know this is hard. I really do. I do not want to hurt you. You know that, right? I just want us both to be happy. You deserve to be happy, even if you could not make me happy." The insult was wrapped in so much cotton wool I almost missed the edge. He was doing it again. He was rewriting reality, making himself the victim and the savior in the same breath. I looked at his tie. It was silk, a deep crimson pattern. I remembered buying it for him for our anniversary 2 years ago. I remembered how he had hugged me, telling me I had the best taste. Now he was wearing it to divorce me. "I just want this to be over, Malcolm," I said, keeping my face blank. "It will be," he promised, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "Look," Bradley says, "we can skip the drama if you just sign the amendment. I am willing to be generous. I will give you the Honda. I will even cover the transfer fees, and you can keep the cat. I know how much you love that cat." He paused, waiting for my gratitude. He was offering me my own car, which I had paid for, and the cat he had kicked just last week for scratching the sofa. "You are too good to me," I said. He missed the sarcasm. He nodded, satisfied. "I try, Addie, I really do. Just think about it. We go in there, you agree to the terms, and we can all go home. You do not want to embarrass yourself in front of a judge. You know how you get when you are emotional. You stumble over your words. It would be painful to watch." He checked his watch. It was a Rolex Submariner. Another gift. Another lie. 10 minutes, he said. Think about it. He walked back to Chloe, who whispered something in his ear. He laughed again and touched the small of her back. I closed my eyes. The sound of his laughter triggered something in my brain. The hallway faded. The smell of floor wax vanished. Suddenly, I wasn't in the courthouse anymore. I was back in our kitchen, 90 days ago. The sunlight was blinding. It hit the white granite countertops of our kitchen and exploded into a headache. It was a Sunday morning, quiet and deceptively peaceful. The coffee machine was gurgling, filling the room with the rich aroma of roasted beans. It was my favorite time of the week. I was wearing my old robe, the one with the coffee stain on the sleeve, holding a mug and feeling content. Malcolm was still asleep upstairs. He had come in late the night before, stumbling a bit, murmuring about a grueling dinner with the regional vice president. I had believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was the provider, the hard worker. I picked up my phone to check the weather. I wanted to know if it was warm enough to open the patio doors. The screen lit up. There was a notification sitting right in the center, bright and unassuming. It was from the bank app. I stared at it. My brain didn't process it immediately. It was just words. Bank of America alert. Transaction authorized. I frowned. We didn't use the Bank of America card on weekends. That was the corporate expense card, or so Malcolm had told me. He said it was strictly for client dinners and travel booking. I swiped to unlock the phone. My thumb hovered over the notification. I felt a tiny prick of unease, like a static shock. Probably a subscription renewal, I thought. Maybe he forgot to cancel a software license. I tapped the alert. The app opened, spinning its little blue wheel. The transaction details loaded. Merchant: the Ritz-Carlton, Amelia Island. Amount: $840. Date: yesterday. I blinked. I read it again. $840. Amelia Island was a 4-hour drive away. Malcolm had said he was at a dinner in Buckhead, 20 minutes from our house. He said he was with the regional VP until midnight. My heart did a strange double beat. It wasn't panic yet, it was confusion. It was the feeling of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Maybe the charge was delayed, I told myself. Maybe he booked a room for a future conference. That made sense. He was always planning ahead. He was the sales director. He had to book venues. But the status said card present. I stood there in the middle of my beautiful, sun-drenched kitchen, holding my mug of coffee that had suddenly gone cold. The silence in the house changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy. It was holding its breath. I put the mug down on the counter. It made a loud clink that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I heard footsteps upstairs. The floorboards creaked. Malcolm was waking up. Panic flared in my chest. I quickly closed the app and put the phone face down on the counter. I felt like I had been caught doing something wrong. Why did I feel guilty? I hadn't done anything, but the secret on the screen felt like a physical weight. I can't ask him, I thought. If I ask him, he'll get mad that I'm snooping. He hates when I check the accounts. He says it shows I don't trust him. But $800 at a resort on a Saturday. I picked the phone back up. I had to know. I opened the transaction history. There was another one. Merchant, Sephora. Amount: $212. Date: Friday. Malcolm didn't wear makeup, and I certainly hadn't received any gifts from Sephora lately. My stomach turned over. A cold wash of nausea swept through me. This wasn't a conference. You don't buy foundation and lipstick for a conference. The stairs creaked again. He was coming down. I waited until dinner to bring it up. I needed the buffer of food, the distraction of forks and knives. I had spent the entire day walking on eggshells, my heart racing every time he looked at me. We were eating lasagna. It was his favorite. I had made it from scratch, rolling out the pasta dough, layering the bechamel. It felt like a peace offering for a war that hadn't started yet. Malcolm was in a good mood. He was talking about his golf swing, about how he was fixing his slice. He took a sip of red wine and smiled at me. "This is delicious, babe," he said. You really outdid yourself." I forced a smile. It felt tight on my face. "Thank you." I pushed a piece of spinach around my plate. "Just ask him," I commanded myself. "Just ask. It's probably nothing. It's probably a gift for his mom, or a prize for a female employee." "Malcolm," I said. My voice sounded thin. He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. I got an alert on the phone today, on the B of A card. His chewing didn't slow down. He didn't flinch. He didn't look guilty. He just looked mildly interested. "Oh? What was it?" There was a charge for the Ritz-Carlton in Amelia Island and one for Sephora. I watched his eyes. I was looking for the dart, the shift, the blink, but there was nothing. He swallowed his food and took another sip of wine. "Oh, that," he said easily. "Yeah, I meant to tell you. Henderson has me setting up a retreat for the top sales reps next month. I had to put the deposit down to hold the block of rooms. They require a card on file." He was so smooth. It flowed out of him like water. "And the Sephora charge?" I asked. He chuckled. That was funny, actually. Henderson's wife forgot her makeup bag when they came down for the planning meeting. He asked me to run out and grab her some stuff. Put it on the expense account. I'm getting reimbursed next week. It was plausible. It was perfectly, terrifyingly plausible. Henderson was the CEO. If the CEO's wife needs mascara, the sales director runs to get it. That was the corporate ladder. But something didn't sit right. "Why didn't you tell me you were in Amelia Island?" I asked. "You said you were in Buckhead." For the first time, a shadow crossed his face. It wasn't fear. It was annoyance. "I was in Buckhead, Adrian. I did the booking over the phone. Do you think I drove 4 hours to buy lipstick? Come on." He set his fork down with a little too much force. "Why are you interrogating me?" he asked. His voice dropped an octave. It wasn't loud, but it was hard. "I'm not," I stammered. It was a lot of money." He sighed, a long, weary sound that sucked the air out of the room. "Adrienne, look at me." I looked up. He was giving me that look, the one you give a slow child who just spilled milk. "I work 60 hours a week to pay for this house," he said, "to pay for that car you drive, to pay for this wine. I deal with millions of dollars in inventory. I manage a team of 40 people. Do you really think I need to run my expense reports by you?" I felt my face heat up. "No, You worry too much," he said, cutting me off. "You have this anxiety and you project it onto me. It is exhausting, honestly. I come home, I want to relax, and instead, I get the third degree about business expenses you don't even understand." He picked up his wine glass and swirled the red liquid. "You're lucky I'm patient," he added softly. "Most guys wouldn't tolerate this kind of mistrust. It's toxic, Adrian. It really is." I shrank into my chair. He was right. I was being paranoid. He was the successful executive. I was just the accountant who worked from home. I didn't understand the high-stakes world of corporate sales. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He smiled again. The warmth returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's okay, babe. I forgive you. Just let me handle the finances, okay? You're good at the small stuff, balancing the checkbook, but leave the big picture to me." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. His palm was warm. I felt grateful for his touch. I was so stupid. I lay in bed that night listening to Malcolm snore. The rhythm was steady, arrogant. He slept the sleep of the righteous. But my mind wouldn't shut off. He had told me to leave the big picture to him. He had told me I was good at the small stuff. I stared at the ceiling fan slicing through the darkness. I am a senior auditor for one of the largest firms in the state, I thought. I find tax fraud for a living. I track down hidden assets for Fortune 500 companies. I can look at a spreadsheet with 10,000 rows and spot a single transposed digit in 3 seconds. The small stuff? The shame he had planted at dinner began to curdle into something else. It turned into professional insult. He had dismissed my entire career, my entire skill set as balancing the checkbook, and his story about the phone booking didn't match the data. I closed my eyes and visualized the notification again. Card present. That meant the magnetic strip was swiped, or the chip was inserted. You cannot trigger a card present status over the phone. He lied. The realization hit me in the chest like a physical blow. He didn't just lie, he lied lazily. He lied assuming I was too stupid or too submissive to know the difference between a POS terminal transaction and a CNP transaction. I sat up in bed. Malcolm shifted but didn't wake. I needed proof. But I couldn't look at the bank account again. He would see the login history. He would get an alert that I was snooping, and he would spin another story, gaslight me harder. I needed to see where he had been, not what he had bought. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. I crept downstairs to the living room. The house was dark, lit only by the blinking green LEDs of the modem in the corner. I didn't go to my laptop. I went to the router. Malcolm thought he was smart about technology. He had changed his phone password. He kept his laptop locked. But he treated the home network like a utility, invisible and boring. I pulled my iPad from the coffee table and sat on the floor, hidden behind the sofa. I typed the router's IP address into the browser. User, admin, password, password. He hadn't even changed the factory default. I logged in and navigated to the device logs. I wasn't looking for websites. I was looking for MAC addresses. Every device has a unique fingerprint. I found his iPhone on the list. I filtered the connection logs for the weekend. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Disconnected. Saturday evening, 11 p.m. No connection. Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Reconnected. He hadn't been in Buckhead. If he had been in Buckhead, 20 minutes away, his phone would have reconnected when he came home late on Saturday night. He hadn't come home on Saturday night. I froze. Wait, he did come home. I heard him. I heard him stumble in. Or did I? I replayed the memory. I had been asleep. I heard the door. I heard footsteps. But did I see him? No. I had rolled over and gone back to sleep. I looked at the logs again. Sunday morning, 10 a.m. That was exactly when he came down the stairs for coffee. He hadn't come home Saturday night. He'd come home Sunday morning, snuck into the house while I was in the shower or the garden, gotten into bed and pretended to wake up. He had been gone the entire night. I felt the room spin, the level of deception required to pull that off. It wasn't just cheating, it was theatrical. It was sociopathic. I needed a name. If he was at the Ritz-Carlton on Amelia Island, he wasn't alone. You don't buy $200 of makeup for yourself. I went to the social media search bar. I didn't have his password, but I didn't need it. People like Malcolm, narcissists who think they are smarter than everyone else, make mistakes because they crave attention. I went to his Instagram. His profile was private, but I followed him. I scrolled through his followers, 450 people. I started filtering. I ignored the men. I ignored the family members. I ignored the obvious colleagues I knew. I looked for the outliers. I found a profile named Coco Dreams. The profile picture was a heavily filtered shot of a girl with platinum blonde hair and lips that looked painful. I clicked on it. Public profile, strike one. I scrolled down, selfies, gym mirror shots, pictures of latte art. Then I saw it. A photo posted yesterday. Location, the Ritz-Carlton, Amelia Island. The photo was of a breakfast spread on a balcony overlooking the ocean, 2 mimosas, 2 plates of eggs Benedict, and in the corner of the frame, resting on the white tablecloth, was a hand. It was a man's hand. He was wearing a Rolex Submariner, and on his pinky finger there was a tiny jagged scar, the one Malcolm got from a fishing hook when he was 12. I stared at the scar. It was the only honest thing in the picture. I read the caption, "Bae took me to paradise for the weekend. So blessed. Mimi spoiled, my king, love him." I clicked on her bio. Chloe Duza. Brand ambassador, dreamer, Sagittarius. I scrolled further back. 2 weeks ago, a photo of a new Louis Vuitton bag. Caption, "Just because gifts are the best." 3 weeks ago, a photo of a bouquet of roses that was bigger than her head. I recognized the vase. It was the crystal vase Malcolm had lost during the move last year. He hadn't lost it. He had given it to her. I felt a scream building in my throat, hot and acidic. I clamped my hand over my mouth. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a one-night stand at a conference. This was a relationship. He was dating her. He was courting her. He was spending our money we were saving for a down payment on a rental property, money for the kids we were trying to have, on this girl who used hashtags like my king. I looked at the timestamp of the breakfast photo, Sunday, 9 a.m. At 9 a.m. Sunday, I was making lasagna. I was worrying about the humidity opening the patio doors. At 9 a.m. Sunday, my husband was drinking mimosas with a 24-year-old in a hotel room that cost $800 a night. I dropped the iPad. It landed on the rug with a soft thud. I stood up, but my knees were water. I stumbled toward the downstairs powder room. I barely made it. I gripped the porcelain sides of the sink and dry heaved. Nothing came up but bile and the bitter taste of betrayal. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked haunted. Her eyes were wide and rimmed with red. Her hair was messy. She looked like a victim. She looked like the poor Addie Malcolm talked about to his friends. "You worry too much. You're lucky I'm patient. Leave the big picture to me." He had been laughing at me. Every time he kissed me goodbye, every time he deposited a check, every time he looked me in the eye, he was laughing. He thought I was a fool. He thought I was a safe, boring appliance that kept his house clean while he lived his real life with Chloe. I turned on the faucet. Cold water rushed out. I splashed it on my face, scrubbing hard, trying to wash away the feeling of his hands, his lies. I grabbed a towel and dried my face. The friction burned my skin. I took a deep breath, then another. I looked at the mirror again. No, I thought. I am not a victim. I am a certified public accountant. I understand forensic auditing. I understand asset tracing. I understand the law of cause and effect. Malcolm thought the world ran on charisma and salesmanship. He thought he could talk his way out of anything. But he was wrong. The world runs on ledgers. Every action has a transaction. Every lie leaves a paper trail. Even if you hide it, even if you delete it, the math always balances in the end. I straightened my back. The nausea was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I walked back to the living room and picked up the iPad. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took a screenshot of the breakfast photo. I took a screenshot of the router logs. Then I opened a new folder in my secure cloud drive. I named it Project Phoenix. I uploaded the files. Then I went back upstairs, crawled into bed next to the man who was destroying my life, and listened to his breathing. "Enjoy your sleep, Malcolm," I thought, staring at his relaxed, arrogant face in the shadows. "Because when I am done with you, you will never sleep soundly again." 2 days after I found the photos of Amelia Island, my phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn. It was a message from Sarah Miller. I stared at the name. Sarah was Malcolm's old administrative assistant, the one he had fired 6 months ago for, as he put it, incompetence and attitude issues. He had replaced her with a 22-year-old named Jessica, who seemed to spend most of her time ordering his lunch. I opened the message. It was short and nervous. It said she needed to talk to me about Malcolm, that it was urgent and that I should not tell him. She suggested a coffee shop 3 towns over, a place called The Grind, at 4 in the afternoon. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop for 10 minutes before going in. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Was this a trap? Had Malcolm sent her to test my loyalty? No. Malcolm was arrogant, but he wasn't complex. He didn't play 4-dimensional chess. He just bullied people until they folded. I walked in. Sarah was sitting in a booth in the back, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and looking over her shoulder. She looked tired. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She just pointed to the seat opposite her. "You came," she said. Her voice was low. I sat down. "You said it was about Malcolm." Sarah took a sip of black coffee. Her hand was shaking slightly. "Look, Mrs. Thorne. Adrian, I know what he told you. He told you I was lazy. He told you I forgot to file the quarterly reports." "He did," I admitted. "He lied," she said flatly. "He fired me because I saw the second set of books." My stomach dropped. The air in the coffee shop suddenly felt very thin. "The second set of books? He has a side hustle, Adrienne, and I do not mean Uber. He is skimming from the vendor contracts. He inflates the invoices for the IT suppliers by 15%. The supplier keeps 5%, and the other 10% comes back to Malcolm in cash or crypto. He calls it the consulting fee." I stared at her. This wasn't just adultery. This was embezzlement. This was prison time. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why now?" Sarah pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "Because he is threatening to sue me for breach of confidentiality if I do not sign a non-disclosure agreement by Friday. He wants to silence me, and I know he is screwing you over too. Everyone at the office knows about Chloe." The name hit me like a physical slap. Hearing it out loud from a stranger made it real in a way the Instagram photo hadn't. "Do you have proof?" I asked. My voice was steady, my auditor brain taking over. Sarah shook her head. "Not on me. He wiped my laptop remotely the second he fired me, but I know where he keeps the physical ledger. He does not trust the cloud with the real, dirty numbers. He is paranoid. He writes it down in a black moleskin notebook. Where is it?" She leaned across the table, lowering her voice to a whisper. "He keeps it at the gym," she said. "The Titan Barbell Club on Peach Street. He has a private executive locker, locker number 42. I frowned. "Why there?" "Because it is the one place you never go," she said, "and the one place the company auditors cannot search. He thinks he is a genius. He calls it his iron bank." I sat back, processing this. A gym locker. It was absurd, but it made perfect sense for Malcolm. He treated the gym like a sanctuary. He spent hours there. It was his territory. "Does it have a combination?" I asked. Sarah nodded. "It is a keypad. He never changes his codes. It is the date he closed his first $1 million deal." I knew that date. We celebrated it every year. August 15th, 2014, 0815. "Okay," I said. "I will get it." Sarah looked at me with genuine fear. "Be careful, Adrienne. If he catches you, he will destroy you. He is not just a cheater. He is dangerous when he is cornered." I stood up and put a $20 bill on the table. "He is already destroying me, Sarah," I said. "He just does not know that I have started the demolition process on him, too." I walked out of the coffee shop. The sun was shining, but I felt cold. I had to break into a men's locker room, steal a notebook that contained evidence of a felony, and get out without being seen. I wasn't a spy. I was an accountant who got anxious when I merged lanes on the highway. But I remembered the Ritz-Carlton receipt. I remembered the text messages I had imagined them sending. I remembered him telling me I was good at the small stuff. I got into my car and started the engine. I was going to the gym. The Titan Barbell Club was a fortress of glass and steel in the trendy part of town. It was the kind of gym that charged $200 a month and had a juice bar that served wheatgrass shots. I pulled my Honda into the parking lot, parking far away from the entrance. I checked the time on the dashboard. It was 11 in the morning on a Tuesday. Malcolm was at work. The gym should be relatively empty. I wasn't a member. That was the first problem. I reached into the back seat and grabbed Malcolm's gym bag. I had taken it from the closet this morning, telling myself I was going to wash his gear. It was a flimsy excuse, but it was all I had. I dug through it and found his membership card in the side pocket. I took a deep breath. "You can do this," I told myself. You are just a helpful wife dropping off her husband's forgotten protein supplements. I walked up to the front desk. The guy working there was massive, with a neck as wide as my waist. He was wearing a tight polo shirt and scrolling on his phone. "Hi," I said, pitching my voice high and breezy. "I am Malcolm Thorne's wife. He left his protein powder at home, and he is freaking out. He asked me to drop it in his locker before his workout later." The guy looked up, bored. He looked at the card in my hand, then at my face. "Guests aren't allowed in the locker rooms, ma'am," he droned. "Policy." I put on my best distressed wife face. "Please, you know how Malcolm is. If he doesn't get his pre-workout, he is a nightmare. I just need 2 minutes. I do not want to drive all the way back here later." The guy hesitated. He probably knew Malcolm. Everyone knew Malcolm. Malcolm was the guy who slammed weights and grunted loudly. "Fine," he sighed. "But make it quick, and knock first. It's the men's room." "Thank you," I gushed. "You are a lifesaver." I hurried past the turnstile before he could change his mind. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I walked down the hallway, past the cardio room where women in expensive leggings were running on treadmills. I reached the door marked Men. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. I knocked. "Hello? Housekeeping?" No answer. I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The locker room smelled of stale sweat, Axe body spray, and steam. It was a humid, heavy smell that stuck to the back of my throat. Rows of gray metal lockers lined the walls. I scanned the numbers. 20, 21, 22. I moved quickly, my sneakers squeaking on the tile floor. I felt exposed. Any second, a man could walk out of the showers wrapped in a towel. Any second, someone could walk in from the gym floor. 38, 39. I found it. Locker, 42. It was a half-size locker with a digital keypad on the handle. I stared at the keypad. 0815. "Please, Sarah, be right," I prayed. I typed the numbers. 0815. The lock beeped, a harsh electronic sound that echoed in the empty room. The light turned green. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I pulled the handle. The locker opened. Inside, there was a pair of running shoes, a towel, and a stack of fitness magazines. I shoved them aside. Underneath the towel, buried in the back corner, was a black notebook. It was a moleskin, just like Sarah had said. I grabbed it. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened it to a random page. It wasn't a workout log. The pages were covered in Malcolm's distinctive, jagged handwriting. Columns of dates, names of companies, amounts, TechSource Solutions 5,000, Omega IT 7,500, Kickback 1,200, cash. I felt a wave of dizziness. It was real. He wrote down the word kickback. He was so arrogant he wrote it down. I didn't steal the book. If I took the book, he would know immediately. He would panic. He would destroy everything else. He would know it was me or Sarah. I pulled out my phone. I switched the camera to silent mode. I started snapping photos. Page 1, click. Page 2, click. Page 3, click. I worked feverishly, turning the pages as fast as I could. The dates went back 2 years. The amounts were staggering. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. Suddenly, I heard the main door handle jiggle. Someone was coming in. I froze. I shoved the notebook back under the towel. I slammed the locker door shut. It clicked locked. I turned around just as a man in a business suit walked in, talking loudly on his cell phone. He stopped when he saw me. He looked confused, then annoyed. "This is the men's room, lady," he snapped. I clutched Malcolm's gym bag to my chest. "So sorry," I squeaked. "Wrong door. Looking for the sauna." I pushed past him, head down, and ran out of the locker room. I didn't stop running until I was in my car, doors locked, gasping for air. I drove home on autopilot. My body was vibrating with adrenaline. I felt like I had just robbed a bank. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Malcolm's BMW. He was home. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Why was he home? Panic seized me. Had the gym guy called him? Did he know? I grabbed my bag and ran to the front door. I tried to compose my face. I couldn't look guilty. I had to look bored. I was just the wife coming home from errands. I unlocked the door and walked in. Malcolm was in the living room, pacing. He was still in his suit, but his tie was loosened. He looked agitated. "Where have you been?" he barked. I flinched. "I went to the grocery store," I lied. "Why are you home so early?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I forgot the file for the Henderson account. I need to find it. Have you seen a blue folder?" He was tearing apart the pile of mail on the console table. He wasn't looking at me. He was focused on his missing file. He didn't know. I let out a microscopic sigh of relief. "No, I haven't seen it," I said. "Did you check your home office? I checked everywhere." He shouted. He turned to me, his eyes wild. "You always move my stuff, Adrienne. You clean up and you hide things. Where did you put it?" He was doing it again, blaming me for his disorganization. Usually, I would apologize. I would help him look. Today, I just stared at him. I felt the phone in my pocket, heavy with the evidence of his crimes. "I did not touch your file, Malcolm," I said calmly. "Maybe you left it at Chloe's." The name slipped out before I could stop it. The room went dead silent. Malcolm stopped tearing at the mail. He turned slowly to face me. His eyes narrowed. "Who is Chloe?" he asked. His voice was dangerously quiet. My heart stopped. I had overplayed my hand. I wasn't ready. I needed the lawyer first. I forced a confused expression onto my face. "Chloe? I don't know. You were talking in your sleep last night. You mumbled the name Chloe. I assumed it was a client." I held his gaze. It was a gamble. He stared at me for a long 5 seconds. He was assessing me. Was I smart enough to know? Was I brave enough to challenge him? He decided I wasn't. He let out a short, dismissive laugh. "You are hearing things, Adrienne. You really need to get your anxiety checked. Chloe is the name of the new HR director. She is 60 years old and has a mustache." He turned back to the mail. "God, you are exhausting." I walked past him into the kitchen. My legs were trembling. "I found it!" he yelled from the other room. "It was under the sofa cushions." He didn't apologize. He never apologized. "I'm leaving!" he shouted. "Don't wait up." The front door slammed. I stood in the kitchen listening to the silence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it into the sink. I needed to back up these photos immediately. If he checked my phone, if he saw them. I opened the freezer. I grabbed a bag of frozen peas. I shoved the phone inside the bag, deep into the frozen mass, just for a moment of irrational panic, thinking he might come back in. Then I realized how stupid that was. I took the phone out. I went to my laptop. I logged into the secure cloud. I uploaded every single photo of the ledger. Then I deleted them from my phone's camera roll. I deleted them from the recently deleted folder. I was safe. For now. That night, I didn't sleep. Malcolm didn't come home. He texted me at 9, saying he was pulling an all-nighter at the office to prep for the Henderson meeting. I knew he was with Chloe. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, a glass of water, and the digital photos of the black notebook. I opened a new spreadsheet. I started transcribing the handwritten notes into data. Date, vendor, invoice amount, kickback amount. I worked methodically. I was no longer the scared wife. I was the auditor. I cross-referenced the dates in the notebook with our bank statements. February 3rd. Kickback received. $2,000 cash. February 4th. Deposit into our joint account. 0. February 4th. Purchase at Tiffany's. $1,800. He was using the stolen money to buy gifts, but the gifts never came to me. I traced another one. May 12th. Kickback. $5,000. May 13th. Cash withdrawal at ATM in Las Vegas. He had told me he was at a training seminar in Orlando that week. The pattern was clear. He was stealing from his company to fund a double life that was bleeding us dry. But it was worse than that. I found an entry from last month, July 15th. Loan repayment $10,000. Loan repayment? To whom? I squinted at the photo. Next to the amount, he had written a name in tiny letters. Vinny. Malcolm didn't have a friend named Vinny. Vinny sounded like a bookie. Vinny sounded like a loan shark. I felt a cold sweat prickle my neck. Gambling. It wasn't just the mistress. It was gambling. The offshore transaction I had seen earlier was just the tip of the iceberg. He was in deep. He was stealing to pay debts. I summed the kickback column for the last 12 months. The total at the bottom of the screen made me gasp. $142,000. He had stolen nearly $150,000 in a single year. And we had nothing to show for it. Our savings were stagnant. My inheritance was gone, supposedly used for the house. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was robbing me. He was robbing his company, and he was involved with dangerous people. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. I closed the laptop. I wasn't just going to divorce him. I was going to have to dismantle him. If I didn't, he would drag me down with him when this house of cards collapsed. The company would come after his assets, which meant our assets. They would seize the house. They would seize my car. I had to strike first. I had to prove that I was a victim of financial fraud, not an accomplice. I needed a lawyer, a shark, someone who ate men like Malcolm for breakfast. I opened a new tab on my browser. I typed in Best Forensic Divorce Attorney Atlanta. The first name that popped up was Sullivan and Associates. The reviews were terrifying. Ruthless. Destroyed my ex. Expensive, but worth every penny. I clicked on the Contact Us button. I typed my name, Adrian Thorne. I typed the message. I have evidence of embezzlement, tax fraud, and dissipation of marital assets. My husband is the sales director for a Fortune 500 company. I have the ledger. When can we meet? I hit send. The house was quiet, but it was a hostile silence. I felt like the walls were watching me. I sat on the floor of the guest room, surrounded by boxes of old paperwork I had dug out of the attic. Malcolm called this room the junk room. He told me to keep my clutter in here. I realize now that my clutter was actually the archive of our life, the paper trail he was too lazy to shred. I was looking for the closing documents for the house. I remembered the day we bought this place, 5 years ago. My grandmother, Nana Rose, had passed away 6 months prior. She left me $150,000. It was everything she had. Her life savings, the sale of her small cottage in Savannah. She had squeezed my hand in the hospital and told me to buy a castle. I found the file. It was a dusty accordion folder labeled House in my handwriting. I pulled out the settlement statement. I remembered the conversation with Malcolm vividly. We were sitting in our old apartment. He was holding my hand, looking earnest and responsible. "Babe," he had said, "the mortgage broker says it is cleaner if the down payment comes from one source. If we split it, the underwriting takes weeks. Just transfer the inheritance to my account, and I will write the single check to the developer. It is just logistics." I believed him. I transferred the money. Now, looking at the documents, I saw the truth. I found the copy of the wire transfer, my account to his account. The memo line in my checkbook read, "For house down payment." But then I found the bank statement for his account from that same month. The deposit from me hit his account on the 1st of the month. On the 2nd of the month, he wired the money to the title company. But the document from the title company listed the source of funds solely as Malcolm Thorne Personal Funds. There was no mention of me, no mention of Nana Rose. He had structured it so that on paper, he paid the entire down payment. In the eyes of a lazy court, I had contributed nothing. If we divorced, he could claim the house was his separate property because he put the money down. I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. He'd been planning this for 5 years. Or maybe he wasn't planning divorce back then, but he was certainly planning to own me. He wanted to make sure that if I ever left, I would leave with nothing. I grabbed a highlighter. I marked the transfer from my account. I marked the deposit into his. The dates matched perfectly. The amounts matched perfectly. $150,000. "You thought you were slick, Malcolm," I whispered to the empty room, "but you forgot that money leaves footprints." I took a picture of the documents. Then I scanned them. Then I put the originals back exactly where I found them, adjusting the dust so it looked undisturbed. I moved to the next pile of papers. I needed to understand Vinny. The entry in the black notebook said, "Loan repayment to Vinny for $10,000. I opened my laptop and pulled up the joint checking account statements again. I knew Malcolm was smart enough not to write a check to a bookie. He would have withdrawn cash. I searched for withdrawals over $500. There were dozens. ATM withdrawal, Las Vegas, ATM withdrawal, Atlantic City, ATM withdrawal, local casino. But I was looking for the big one. The $10,000. I found it on a statement from last July. Wire transfer, $10,000. Recipient, Consulting Services, LLC. I frowned. Consulting Services, LLC? That sounded fake. It sounded like the kind of company name a child would invent. I copied the name and pasted it into the state business registry search. No results found in Georgia. I tried Delaware. Nothing. I tried Nevada. Bingo. Consulting Services, LLC. Registered agent, Vincent the Vulture Moretti. I stared at the screen. The Vulture? Seriously? It was like something out of a bad mob movie, but the address was a strip mall in North Las Vegas. I dug deeper. I Googled the address. It was a check cashing place next to a pawn shop. My stomach churned. Malcolm wasn't just gambling for fun. He was borrowing money from loan sharks. I looked at the date of the transfer, July 15th. I cross-referenced it with our savings account. On July 14th, there was a withdrawal from our emergency fund, $10,000. I remembered that day. The AC unit had broken. I told Malcolm we needed to fix it. He told me the repair guy demanded cash up front because it was a weekend. I gave him the access code to the savings account. He didn't pay the AC guy. He fixed the unit himself with duct tape and a prayer and told me he talked the guy down. He took the $10,000 and sent it to Vinny. I felt sick. That was our safety net. That was the money for if one of us got sick. That was the money for a baby. He had gambled away our future. I kept scrolling. I found more transfers to Consulting Services, LLC. $2,000 here, $5,000 there. I did a quick sum in my head. Over the last 2 years, he had sent over $40,000 to Nevada. That explained why he was always stressing about money. That explained why he yelled at me for buying expensive organic milk. He was bleeding cash to cover his losses, and he was terrified of having his legs broken. He wasn't the powerful executive he pretended to be. He was a desperate junkie. I needed to get out of the house. The walls were closing in on me. I needed to confirm one last thing. The receipt I had found in his pocket 90 days ago. The bracelet Lillet Claw Jewelers. It was a boutique shop downtown, the kind that offered you champagne when you walked in and had a security guard in a tuxedo. I put on my best dress. I put on my wedding ring. It felt heavy and hot on my finger, like a shackle. But I needed the prop. I drove downtown. I parked the Honda around the corner so the valet wouldn't judge me. I walked into the store. The air conditioning was freezing. The store smelled of lilies and money. A sales clerk glided toward me. She was a woman in her 50s with impeccable hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome," she cooed. "How can I help you today?" I clutched my purse. I needed to play this perfectly. "Hi," I said, trying to sound flustered but wealthy. "My husband bought a bracelet here a few months ago, a gold cuff with topaz. He said I need to get it added to our insurance policy, and he lost the appraisal certificate. He is so disorganized." I laughed, a nervous, tinkling sound. "You know how men are." The clerk nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Do you have his name?" "Malcolm Thorne," I said. She typed into her computer. Her face lit up. Yes, Mr. Thorne, I remember him. Such a charming man." My stomach tightened. "Yes, he is." "He was in here. Let's see, 3 months ago," she said, reading the screen. "The topaz love bracelet, a beautiful piece." "Yes," I said. "He gave it to me for our special occasion." The clerk beamed. "Oh, did he finally ask?" I froze. "Ask?" "He told me he was buying it for his fiancée," she whispered, leaning in conspiratorially. "He said he was going to propose that weekend. He was so nervous. He wanted everything to be perfect." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Fiancé? He wasn't just sleeping with her. He was building a whole new life. He was playing house. He had told this stranger, this sales clerk, that he was proposing, while he was still married to me. "He said she is the love of his life," the clerk continued, oblivious to the fact that she was twisting a knife into my heart. "He said they were going to Paris for the honeymoon." Paris. We had always talked about going to Paris. He told me it was too expensive. He told me he hated the French. I forced a smile. It felt like my face was cracking. "Yes," I managed to say. "It was very romantic. Can I get that appraisal?" "Of course," she said. She printed a document and slid it into an envelope. "Here you go, Mrs. Thorne, and congratulations." "Thank you," I whispered. I took the envelope. It was proof. Proof that he bought it. Proof of the value. $5,000. But the real proof was the hole in my chest where my heart used to be. I had the receipts. I had the ledger photos. I had the appraisal. Now I needed the official bank records. The screenshots I had taken were good, but Mr. Sullivan, the lawyer I hoped to hire, would need certified copies to bury Malcolm in court. I drove to our bank branch. It was the one we had used for 7 years. I walked up to the counter. There was a young teller I didn't recognize. Her name tag said Kayla. She looked bored. "Hi," I said. "I need to print the last 2 years of statements for our joint account and also for my husband's personal account. We are applying for a mortgage refi." It was a standard lie. Kayla tapped on her keyboard. "Name?" "Malcolm and Adrienne Thorne." She looked at the screen. "Okay, I see the joint account. I can print those." "And the personal one?" I asked. "The one ending in 4490? She frowned. "I see that account, but your name isn't on it, ma'am. It is just Malcolm Thorne." "I know," I said, keeping my voice even, "but I have power of attorney, and like I said, it is for a refinance. He is on a conference call and couldn't come in." "I need to see the POA documentation," she said robotically. I didn't have it on me. I didn't even know if the one we signed 3 years ago was still valid. "Look," I said, letting a little desperation creep into my voice. "We have been banking here for 7 years. Ask Mr. Henderson. He knows us." Mr. Henderson was the branch manager. He was a nice man who always gave me a lollipop when I came in, even though I was 32. "Mr. Henderson is at lunch," Kayla said. "I can't give you access to an account you aren't a signer on. It is policy." I felt the panic rising. I needed those statements. I needed to prove the transfers to Vinny and the consulting LLC. "Please," I said. "It is really urgent." Kayla crossed her arms. "I can't do it." I took a deep breath. I channeled my inner Malcolm. What would he do? He wouldn't beg. He would manipulate. "Okay," I said, pulling out my phone. "I will just call Malcolm. He is going to be furious that he has to come down here. He threatened to move our business accounts to Chase last week. You know he manages the corporate payroll for his firm through this branch, right? That is a lot of fees you guys would lose." It was a bluff. Malcolm's company used this bank, but he didn't control where they banked. But Kayla didn't know that. She hesitated. Her eyes darted to the manager's office door. "Wait," she said. "Let me check the notes." She typed furiously. "Okay," she said slowly. "I see a note here from last year authorizing spousal access for tax purposes. It is expired, but since you are here..." She looked around to make sure no one was watching. "I will print them," she whispered. "But don't tell Mr. Henderson." "You are an angel," I said. The printer whirred. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It spit out page after page of incriminating evidence. She handed me the thick stack of paper. "Have a nice day." "I will," I said. I walked out of the bank with the smoking gun in my purse. I got into my car and locked the doors. The silence inside the Honda was sudden and absolute. I placed the envelope from the jewelry store and the stack of bank statements on the passenger seat. They looked so innocent. Just paper, just ink. But they were the autopsy report of my marriage. I put the key in the ignition, but I couldn't turn it. My hand wouldn't move. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. The air in the car felt thick, like water. My chest tightened. I gasped, trying to pull oxygen into my lungs, but my throat had closed up. Panic attack. I gripped the steering wheel. My fingers were numb. "Breathe," I commanded myself. "Just breathe." But I couldn't. All the lies crashed down on me at once. The business trips. The working late. The "you're crazy, Adrienne." The "you're useless." I remembered a fight we had 6 months ago. I had burned the roast chicken. It was a simple mistake. Malcolm had looked at me with such cold disdain. "You have one job, Adrienne," he had said. "One job. To keep this house running. And you can't even do that. What do you bring to the table? Honestly? Because it certainly isn't money and it isn't competence." I had cried. I had apologized. I had begged for his forgiveness. I was so pathetic. Tears hot and fast streamed down my face. I sobbed, a guttural, ugly sound that tore out of my throat. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel. "I hate you," I screamed. "I hate you," I screamed until my throat was raw. I screamed for the wasted years. I screamed for the baby we never had because he wasn't ready, while he was planning a family with Chloe. I screamed for the naive girl who thought love was enough. I slumped back against the seat, exhausted. My breath hitched. I looked at the passenger seat. "What do you bring to the table?" he had asked. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I looked at the bank statements. I looked at the black notebook photos on my phone. I brought the truth, Malcolm. I sat up straight. The panic receded, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. It was like iron settling in my blood. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. My eyes were puffy. My mascara was smeared. I didn't care. I wasn't the wife anymore. I wasn't the victim. I was the prosecutor. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. I put the car in drive. I had an appointment to keep. Mr. Sullivan's office was in a brownstone in Midtown, squeezed between a trendy bistro and an antique shop. There was no glass and steel here, no marble lobby, just a heavy oak door with a small brass plaque that read, "Sullivan and Associates, Attorneys at Law." I walked in. The waiting room smelled of old leather, pipe tobacco, and dust. It was quiet. A receptionist with gray hair and reading glasses looked up. "Mrs. Thorne?" she asked. "Yes. He is expecting you. Go on back." I walked down a narrow hallway lined with bookshelves. The books looked like they had been there since the Civil War. I entered the office at the end of the hall. Mr. Sullivan was sitting behind a desk that was big enough to land a plane on. He was a small man, withered and wrinkled, wearing a tweed suit that looked 3 sizes too big. He looked like a tortoise, but his eyes were sharp. They were blue and piercing, like chips of ice. "Sit," he said. His voice was like dry leaves scraping together. I sat. I didn't fidget. I placed my bag on the floor and pulled out my file. "You said in your email you have evidence," he said. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I do," I said. I laid it out. First, the photos of the black notebook. "This is his ledger of illegal kickbacks from vendors," I said. "He is embezzling from his company." Sullivan put on his spectacles and leaned in. He studied the photos. He didn't say a word. Next, the bank statements. "This is the money trail," I said. "Transfers to offshore betting sites, transfers to loan sharks in Nevada, and transfers to his mistress." I put the jewelry store appraisal on top. And this is the $5,000 bracelet he bought her with marital funds while telling me we couldn't afford a vacation. Finally, the mortgage trace. And this proves the house down payment was my inheritance, which he laundered through his account to claim as his own. Sullivan looked at the documents for a long time. The silence stretched out. I heard a grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Finally, he looked up. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. "Mrs. Thorne," he said, "usually people come in here with a sobbing story and a few text messages. They want me to be their therapist." He tapped the pile of papers with a gnarled finger. "This," he said, and a slow, terrifying smile spread across his face, "is not a divorce case." "It's not?" I asked, my heart sinking. "No," he chuckled. "This is an execution." He opened a drawer and pulled out a retainer agreement. "I will take the case," he said. "We are going to file for divorce on the grounds of adultery and cruel treatment. We are going to file a forensic accounting motion, and we are going to send a copy of this little black book to the IRS. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Do you want to destroy him?" he asked softly. I thought about Malcolm's face when he told me I was useless. I thought about the fiancé comment at the jewelry store. "No," I said calmly. "I don't want to destroy him. I just want him to face the arithmetic of his own choices." Sullivan laughed. It was a dry, raspy sound. "I like you, Mrs. Thorne. Sign here." I signed. The pen scratched against the paper. It sounded like a sword being drawn from a scabbard. Mr. Sullivan leaned back in his leather chair, tapping a fountain pen against his chin. The sound was rhythmic and sharp, like a ticking clock. "We have the evidence," he said, "but evidence is only bullets. We need a target, and the best target is a man who thinks he has already won." I nodded, gripping the armrests of the chair. "So what do I do?" "You go home," he said. "You cook him dinner, and you tell him he is right." I felt my stomach turn over. I have to tell him he is right? Sullivan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the midtown traffic. "You have to feed his ego, Mrs. Thorne. Narcissists are like sharks. They have to keep moving, keep eating. If he thinks you are fighting back, he will hide assets. He will destroy that black book. He will spook the mistress. We need him calm. We need him arrogant." He turned back to me, his eyes cold behind his glasses. "Tell him you spoke to a lawyer who said you have no case. Tell him you are tired. Tell him you just want to sign the papers and go live with your mother. Cry if you can. He will love that." I thought about Malcolm's smirk. I thought about the way he touched my hair when he was lying to me. "I don't know if I can do that," I whispered. Sullivan leaned over the desk. His voice dropped to a growl. "You are an auditor, Adrienne. You uncover fraud for a living. This is just another undercover operation. You aren't his wife anymore. You are a spy in enemy territory. Can you do it?" I took a deep breath. I imagined the black notebook. I imagined the text to Vinny. "Yes," I said, "I can do it." "Good," Sullivan said. "Make him feel generous. Make him think he is doing you a favor by leaving you with nothing." I made pot roast. It was heavy, comforting food, the kind his mother used to make. The house smelled of rosemary and thyme, a domestic perfume designed to mask the rot underneath. Malcolm came home at 7. He was whistling. He threw his keys on the counter. The sound of metal hitting granite made me flinch, but I forced a smile. "Hey, babe," he said. "Smells good." He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat at the table. He didn't ask about my day. He never asked about my day. We ate in silence for a few minutes. I pushed a carrot around my plate. "Malcolm," I said softly. He looked up, chewing. "Yeah?" I thought about what we talked about. The divorce. He put his fork down. His face shifted into that mask of toxic concern. The eyebrows went up. The lips pursed. "And?" he asked. I took a shaky breath. I pinched my leg under the table to make my eyes water. "I think you are right," I said. "I went to see a lawyer today, a free one at the clinic." Malcolm snorted. "A clinic lawyer? Good luck with that," he said. "He said, I can't win," I lied. "He said, since you paid the mortgage, the house is yours. He said I should just take what you offer and be grateful." I let a tear slip down my cheek. It wasn't hard. I was crying for the injustice of it, but he thought I was crying from defeat. Malcolm's face relaxed. He smiled. It was a terrifying, benevolent smile. "See?" he said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "I told you, Addie. I know the law. I know finance. I wasn't trying to be mean. I was trying to save you from embarrassing yourself." He squeezed my hand. "I am doing this for you, really. You aren't cut out for stress. You need a simple life, an apartment, maybe a cat. You will be happier without the burden of this big house." He was rewriting history in real time. He was stripping me of my home and calling it charity. So I wiped my eyes. "If I sign the amendment." "You will let me keep the Honda?" He laughed gently. "Of course, sweetie. I'm not a monster. I will give you the car. I will even throw in $5,000 for moving expenses." How does that sound? 5,000. He owed me $500,000. "Thank you, Malcolm," I whispered. "You are very generous." He sat back, sipping his whiskey, looking at me with the satisfaction of a man who just closed a difficult deal. "You are making the right choice, Adrienne. Finally." The next day, the universe decided to test my resolve. I was at the grocery store buying frozen dinners because I couldn't bring myself to cook again. I felt hollowed out. The acting performance had drained me. I turned the corner into the frozen aisle and nearly collided with a cart. "Oh, excuse me," a voice said. I looked up. It was Chloe. She was wearing yoga pants and a tight crop top that showed off her perfect abs. She looked glowing. She looked like the future. She recognized me instantly. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into a cat-like slit. "Oh," she said. "Hi, Adrienne, right?" I gripped the handle of my cart. My knuckles turned white. "Hello, Chloe." She looked down at my cart. She saw the stack of lean cuisines. She saw the box of cheap wine. Then she looked at her own cart. Organic kale, expensive steaks, a bottle of Veuve Clicquot champagne. The contrast was brutal. She was buying a celebration dinner. I was buying depression food. She smiled. It was a pitying, ugly thing. "Getting ready for single life?" she asked. Her voice was sugary sweet. "I am managing," I said stiffly. "Look," she said, stepping closer. "I know you probably hate me, but Malcolm and I, it is just different. We are soulmates. He was so unhappy with you. He told me how you suffocated him. I felt a surge of rage so hot it almost blinded me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that her soulmate was a thief who was paying for that champagne with stolen kickbacks. But I couldn't. Sullivan's voice rang in my head. "Let him think he has won." I forced my shoulders to drop. I looked at the floor. "He needs someone dynamic," I said quietly. "Someone like you. I guess I was just too boring." Chloe preened. She actually preened. She touched the gold bracelet on her wrist, the one I had the receipt for. "Well, everything happens for a reason," she said. "Good luck, Adrienne. I hope you find whatever it is you need." She pushed her cart past me, the wheels rattling on the linoleum. I stood there for a full minute, shaking. I stared at the frozen lasagna in my cart. "Enjoy the steak, Chloe," I thought, "because it is the last meal he is ever going to buy you." I got home and went straight to my office. I needed to check the files. I needed to reassure myself that the plan was still on track. I sat down at my desk and pressed the power button on my laptop. Nothing happened. I pressed it again, harder. The screen remained black. The little power light didn't blink. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I checked the charger. It was plugged in. The light on the cord was green. The laptop had power. It just wouldn't turn on. I felt a wave of nausea. Had Malcolm done this? Had he come home while I was at the store? Had he found the files? I stood up and ran to the router. The cables were untouched. I ran back to the laptop. I held the power button down for 10 seconds. 20 seconds. Silence. My entire case was on that machine. The scans of the ledger, the bank statements, the timeline I had built for Sullivan. I knew I had backed it up to the cloud, but what if the hard drive was corrupted? What if I couldn't access the cloud without the two-factor authentication linked to this device? I grabbed my keys and ran out the door. I drove to a computer repair shop in the strip mall, a place called the Tech Doctor. I was speeding. I ran a red light. I didn't care. I burst into the shop, clutching the laptop like a dying infant. "Please," I gasped to the guy behind the counter. "It won't turn on. I have a court hearing tomorrow. My life is on this drive." The guy, a teenager with blue hair, looked at me calmly. "Chill," he said. "Let me see." He took the laptop. He plugged it into a diagnostic tool. He typed some commands on his own screen. I held my breath. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "Motherboard is fried," he said casually. "Probably a surge." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Can you save the data?" He shrugged. "Yeah, the drive is separate. I can pull it and put it in an external enclosure. Take 20 minutes. I slumped against the counter. 20 minutes. "Do it," I said, "please." I spent the next 20 minutes pacing the small shop, staring at phone cases and USB cables. I thought about Malcolm finding out. I thought about walking into court with nothing. Finally, the kid came back. He handed me a small black hard drive. "Here you go," he said. "Everything is on here. That will be $80. I paid him with shaking hands. I walked out to the car. I held the drive against my chest. It was just a piece of plastic, but inside, it was my freedom. The house was dark, except for the light spilling from the living room. Malcolm was on the phone. He was laughing. He had a glass of wine in his hand and his feet up on the coffee table. My coffee table, the one I had refinished myself. I heard him talking to his friend, Dave. "Yeah, tomorrow morning," he said. "It is a done deal. She is rolling over. I'm keeping the house." "Yeah, total victory lap. We are going to Cabo on Friday to celebrate." I stood in the hallway, unseen, listening to him plan a vacation with his mistress using money he didn't have. I walked upstairs to the guest room. I didn't have a suitcase. Malcolm would notice a suitcase. I took a large tote bag. I packed the essentials, my passport, my birth certificate, the hard drive, a change of underwear. I looked around the room. This was my house. I had picked out the paint colors. I had planted the hydrangeas in the front yard. I had paid the mortgage for 3 years while he gambled away our savings. And tomorrow, I might lose it all. If the judge didn't believe me, if Sullivan messed up, if Malcolm's charm worked one last time. I sat on the edge of the bed. The fear was a physical weight pressing down on my shoulders. I wanted to run. I wanted to get in the car and drive until the gas ran out. But then I heard Malcolm laugh again downstairs. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. No, I wasn't running. I stood up and went to the closet. I pulled out my outfit for tomorrow, the navy blue suit, the white blouse, the sensible heels. It wasn't fashion. It was armor. I hung it on the doorframe. I stared at it until the fear turned into something colder, harder. "Enjoy your wine, Malcolm," I thought. "It is the last drink you will ever enjoy in this house." The alarm went off at 5 in the morning. It was still dark outside. The rain was hammering against the roof, a relentless drumming rhythm. I didn't hit snooze. I was wide awake. I hadn't really slept. I got up and went to the bathroom. I moved quietly. Malcolm was asleep in the master bedroom down the hall. I could hear his rhythmic snoring. He was sleeping the sleep of the innocent or the delusional. I showered. I scrubbed my skin until it was red. I wanted to wash away the last 3 months. I wanted to wash away the fear. I put on the suit. I buttoned the blouse all the way to the top. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't Adrienne, the housewife. She wasn't the woman who cried over burnt chicken. She was someone else. She was a weapon forged in the fire of betrayal. I grabbed the tote bag. I grabbed the file folder with the certified bank documents. I walked down the stairs. The house was silent. The ghosts of our marriage were in every corner. The spot on the rug where we drank wine, the wall where we hung our wedding photos. I didn't look back. I walked out the front door and locked it behind me. The click of the deadbolt sounded final. I got into the Honda. The engine sputtered, then caught. I backed out of the driveway. I looked up at the bedroom window. The curtains were drawn. Malcolm was still dreaming of Cabo. I put the car in drive. "Let's go to court," I said aloud. The rain lashed against the windshield, but the wipers swept it away, clearing the path forward. I drove toward the city, toward the truth, toward the end of the world as Malcolm knew it. The bailiff shouted for all to rise. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Patterson, who looked like she had absolutely no patience for nonsense, swept into the room. We sat down. Malcolm was on the other side of the aisle. He leaned back in his chair, whispering something to Bradley, his lawyer. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man who was about to sign a lease on a new life. Bradley stood up first. He adjusted his silk tie and gave the judge a winning smile. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "This is a simple case. We have a primary breadwinner, Mr. Thorne, who has tirelessly supported his wife for 7 years. Mrs. Thorne has made no significant financial contribution to the marital estate." I stared at the table. My hands were folded in my lap. I dug my fingernails into my palm to keep from shaking. Bradley continued, "We are asking for an equitable division of assets, 80-20 in favor of my client. We believe this reflects the reality of the financial input. Mr. Thorne paid the mortgage. Mr. Thorne paid for the cars. Mr. Thorne put food on the table." He gestured to Malcolm, who looked appropriately humble and weary. "We simply want to formalize what has been the reality for years," Bradley concluded. "Mr. Thorne is generous. He is willing to offer a settlement to help Mrs. Thorne transition, but the house and the savings are rightfully his." Judge Patterson looked over her glasses at us. "Mr. Sullivan?" My lawyer stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't adjust his tie. He looked like a bored undertaker. "Your Honor," Sullivan said, his voice dry and scratching against the silence. "That was a lovely story, but as my client knows, stories are for children. Courts are for math." Malcolm smirked. He thought Sullivan was senile. "And the math," Sullivan continued, "does not add up." Sullivan picked up the first document. It was the mortgage trace I had scanned from the archives. "Mr. Bradley claims his client paid the down payment on the marital home," Sullivan said. He walked to the bench and handed the paper to the bailiff. "However, Exhibit A shows a wire transfer from Adrienne Thorne's inheritance account to Malcolm Thorne's personal checking account dated November 1st, 5 years ago. Amount $150,000. Malcolm's smirk faltered. He shifted in his seat. Sullivan picked up the second document. "And Exhibit B shows a wire transfer from Malcolm Thorne's account to the title company on November 2nd. Amount $150,000. Sullivan turned to look at Malcolm. Mr. Thorne laundered his wife's inheritance through his personal account to claim it as his own contribution, Sullivan said. "That is not breadwinning, Your Honor. That is commingling separate property with the intent to defraud." The judge frowned. She looked at the documents, flipping back and forth between the dates. "Is this true, Mr. Bradley?" she asked. Bradley scrambled. He looked at Malcolm. Malcolm looked pale. "Your Honor, it was a joint decision for administrative ease," Bradley stammered. "It was theft," Sullivan corrected calmly. "We ask that the home be awarded 100% to Mrs. Thorne as reimbursement for her separate property." Malcolm gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. He hadn't expected this. He thought I was stupid. He thought I didn't keep records. But we were just getting started. Sullivan didn't sit down. He walked back to our table and picked up the thick stack of bank statements, the ones Kayla had printed for me. Furthermore, Sullivan said, raising his voice slightly, we contest the 80-20 split on the grounds of dissipation of marital assets. Dissipation? Bradley squeaked. Gambling, Sullivan said. He dropped the stack of papers on the defense table. It landed with a heavy thud. Over the last 24 months, Mr. Thorne has transferred exactly $42,000 to an entity named Consulting Services, LLC in North Las Vegas. Malcolm flinched, as if he had been slapped. We ran a background check on this entity, Sullivan continued. It is a shell company registered to a Mr. Vincent Moretti. Mr. Moretti is known to local authorities as an unlicensed bookmaker. The judge's eyebrows shot up. A bookie? Sullivan nodded. A shark, Your Honor. Mr. Thorne has been draining the family emergency fund to pay gambling debts. Malcolm stood up. That is a lie, he shouted. Those are consulting fees. I work in sales. I hire consultants. Sit down, Mr. Thorne, the judge barked. Malcolm sank back into his chair. He was sweating now. I could see a bead of perspiration rolling down his temple. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, pleading. He was mouthing the word, why? I looked right through him. I didn't feel triumph. I felt precision. I was balancing the ledger. And finally, Sullivan said, twisting the knife, we have the receipts for the jewelry. He held up the appraisal. $5,000 for a bracelet purchased 3 months ago, given to a third party. A Miss Chloe Duza. The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a second. We are asking for the return of these dissipated funds to the marital estate, Sullivan said, which by my calculation leaves Mr. Thorne with a net deficit of roughly $90,000. Bradley looked defeated. He started whispering frantically to Malcolm, probably telling him to settle, but Sullivan wasn't done. He had promised me an execution. There is one more thing, Your Honor, Sullivan said. He pulled a small black hard drive from his pocket. My client, being a diligent forensic accountant, discovered the source of Mr. Thorne's gambling funds. It appears his salary was not enough to cover his losses. Malcolm stopped breathing. I saw the color drain out of his face completely. He looked like a corpse. This drive contains photographs of a physical ledger kept in Locker 42 at the Titan Barbell Club, Sullivan said. It details illegal kickbacks from vendors totaling $140,000 over the last fiscal year. Objection, Bradley yelled, standing up. This is inadmissible. This is hearsay. It is not hearsay, Sullivan said calmly. It is evidence of unreported income. And since this income was not declared on the joint tax return, Mrs. Thorne is filing for innocent spouse relief with the IRS today. Sullivan paused. He looked at his watch. And since we have a duty to report crimes, copies of this ledger were emailed to Mr. Harrison, the CEO of Mr. Thorne's company, approximately 30 minutes ago. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, a sound broke it. Psst, psst, psst. It was Malcolm's phone, sitting on the table. It vibrated against the wood. Malcolm stared at it. The screen lit up. Incoming call, Mr. Harrison, CEO. He didn't answer it. He couldn't. The judge looked at Malcolm with pure disgust. Mr. Bradley, she said, her voice like ice. I suggest you take a recess to advise your client on his criminal exposure. We are done here regarding the divorce. I am granting the petitioner's request in full. The house is hers. The savings are hers. And Mr. Thorne is responsible for his own debts. She banged the gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. We walked out into the hallway. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. Malcolm stumbled out of the courtroom. He looked shell-shocked. He was holding his phone, which had finally stopped buzzing. Chloe was waiting on the bench outside. She stood up when she saw him, a smile plastered on her face. "Well?" she asked. "Did we win? When do we get the keys?" Malcolm looked at her. He looked at his beautiful mistress, the woman he had destroyed his marriage for. "It is over," he whispered. "What is over?" she asked, confused. "The hearing?" "Everything," Malcolm said. His voice cracked. "I lost the house. I lost the money. And I think I just lost my job." Chloe froze. Her eyes darted from Malcolm to me, then back to Malcolm. She did the math faster than I ever could. "You are broke?" she asked. Her voice lost all its sweetness. It became sharp and nasal. I have debt," Malcolm stammered. "A lot of debt." Chloe laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "Are you kidding me? You told me you were rich. You told me she was the dead weight." "She is taking everything," Malcolm said. "Then she can have you too," Chloe spat. She grabbed her purse. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. She turned on her expensive heels and marched down the hallway, the sound of her stilettos echoing like gunfire. Malcolm watched her go. He looked small. He looked old. He turned to me. "Addie," he said. His voice was trembling. "Addie, please, you can't do this. I have nowhere to go." "Vinny. If I don't pay Vinny." He reached out to grab my arm. I stepped back out of his reach. I looked at him. I tried to find the man I had loved. I tried to find the charming executive who swept me off my feet. He wasn't there. There was only a thief, a liar, a stranger. "You should have thought about Vinny before you spent our emergency fund, Malcolm," I said. "Addie, please," he begged. Tears were actually forming in his eyes now, real tears, tears of fear. "I can fix this. We can fix this. I will go to therapy. I will cut off Chloe. Just don't leave me with nothing." I felt a ghost of the old urge to help him, the urge to fix his tie, to smooth over his mistakes, to carry his burden. But then I remembered the gym locker. I remembered the words kickback written in his handwriting. I remembered him calling me useless. "I am not leaving you with nothing, Malcolm," I said softly. He looked up, hope sparking in his eyes. "I am leaving you with the consequences of your own actions," I said. "That is the only thing you truly earned." I turned around. Mr. Sullivan was standing by the exit, holding the door open for me. He gave me a rare small nod of respect. I walked toward him. "Wait!" Malcolm screamed behind me. "Adrienne!" I kept walking. I walked through the heavy oak doors. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. The air smelled of wet pavement and ozone. It smelled clean. I took a deep breath. My chest expanded. There was no weight there anymore, no secrets, no anxiety. I walked to my Honda. It was old. It had a dent in the bumper, but it was mine. I got in and started the engine. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove. I drove toward my house paid for by my grandmother, defended by my own wits. I was an accountant, and for the first time in my life, the books were finally balanced. Update. 3 months later, life is quiet now, but it is a good kind of quiet. I kept the house. I repainted the bedroom a soft sage green to cover up the gray Malcolm loved. I adopted a second cat, a scruffy orange tabby I named Ledger. Malcolm did not go to Cabo. He went to federal prison. It turns out Mr. Harrison did not take kindly to the embezzlement. Malcolm took a plea deal to do 3 years in a minimum security facility in Alabama. He writes me letters sometimes. He asks for money for the commissary. I return them unopened. As for Chloe, I saw her on Instagram last week. She has a new boyfriend. He looks older, richer, and he wears a very large watch. She posted a photo of a new convertible with the caption, "My king spoils me." I almost commented. I almost warned him. But then I scrolled past. Some lessons you have to learn the hard way. I am currently studying for my forensic accounting certification. Mr. Sullivan offered me a job at his firm starting next month. He says he needs someone who knows how to hunt. I told him I would take it. After all, I'm very good at the small stuff. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.